Okay, so we live. Okay, so good evening. Welcome everybody to our Women's Day virtual conference. Actually, okay, it's Friday, so we decided to do it on Friday because Sunday it's a weekend. So we're gonna be talking mostly about women in leadership, most probably the transformation of women in leadership, like since 1994, how women in leadership has transformed. Okay, so today I'm joined by two ladies, if I can say. We have Dr. Nonzwakazi Maqhubela, who is a senior lecturer of sociology at the University of Mpumalanga, and she is also a program leader of Bachelor of Arts at University of Mpumalanga. She also has a PhD in Women and Gender Studies at the University of Warwick in the United Kingdom. Welcome to the broadcast, Pamela. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Okay.
And we also have Lady Miss Putisho Litiba. Miss Putisho Litiba is a political. It's a qualified political scientist. She is a businesswoman, an entrepreneur. She's a public speaker, and she is a founder of Akio Grace, which is a clothing business. She's also a founder of a Preachers Forum. Ms. Putisho, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so without any waste of time, we wanna go straight to today's agenda, which is women in leadership. Actually, the role of women in leadership, if I can put it in that way, most especially in South Africa. So now I will start with saying that, like, this one to Dr. Maqhubela, if like you can tell us a bit of what is the most significant barrier to female, like, or women in leadership in this country, like according to your opinion, what is the most significant barrier to women in leadership?
Are you saying I should answer now?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. No, thank you very much. Quite honestly speaking, South Africa is it's actually at a dismal point in empowering women at this point in time. So the barriers that I have are actually multifaceted and multidimensional. And I cannot say the one is more important than the other. But what I can say is that, we have serious problems with perceptions, expectations, and attitudes towards women leaders in our country. So I just want to leave it at that because I'm going to unpack all of them as I present now. And you see why I'm saying there's no one which I can say it's actually more than the other, because they are actually an interplay of all those which I'm going to present right now. But otherwise, mainly are structural and traditional based. Did you get that? Hello? Hello?
Okay,
Yeah.
Technology. Okay. Now that you have touched something, you touched something about traditional. So I think which is also an important aspect if you can look at it like in today's life or from like back then. Okay, and I will now say that now looking at it to Ms. Putisho, to say that are women in leadership position really intimidating? Like when you're looking at it, are they really intimidating, or is it a fact that men or males are just uncomfortable being led by women?
I would say that to a certain extent, males are not really intimidated, but they are just not used to having women in leadership because of how the systems have been set for a long time. So, in order for them to allow women into those spaces, it feels like some sort of competition for them. So, to a certain extent, they do everything they can to oppress women so that they do not get into those spaces, by just because they have not been having them in such spaces, so they feel like a threat to a certain extent. And because they are used to certain systems like patriarchy, which never really allow women in such spaces, so for them, having women in those particular spaces is some sort of just a norm, because according to them, women are not intellectually capable of entering such spaces, or maybe they just do not have the capacity to take over the leadership spaces. But it is not that women are not capable.
Okay, thank you. And to those that are maybe wondering why Dr. Nonzokazi Maqubela is not appearing, her camera is having problems. So yeah, you will see her next time, guys. So um when we're still on that traditional issue, because now mind you, tradition is what we are living. So now we're still on that traditional issue that Dr. Maqubela touched on at the beginning. So if let me just give her the platform now to just um tell us, or maybe in detail, to about gender and cultural stereotypes, to say how the society has an impact on female or women in leadership, rather, if I can put it that way, and the impact of what society traditionally expect from women, most especially women in leadership position.
Okay, all right. And as I've said, I want you to note that I've actually explained that these are multidimensional, and the problems can be categorized into cultural values, organizational values, and also personal values. But on the idea of the cultural values, the cultural values together with the stereotypes have a very huge bearing in women's challenges at the workplace. And these are a serious problem for both men and women, because these are actually attributed to the erection of the glass ceiling for female academics. Let me not say academics per se, I mean all women in leadership, for instance. So you'll find that interplay actually causes that, some call it a glass cliff, for instance. It causes the glass ceiling so that women cannot go beyond certain positions at the workplace. And the fact that we have a problem with these stereotypes, where you find that, for instance, men are attributed that good manager, attribute. And therefore, these are tradition. You'll find that the leadership characteristics are usually given to men, because traditionally men will be arrogated those powers of being competitive, assertive, and authoritative, and automatically they become good candidates for being good managers or good leaders out there. And this also causes the attitude towards female leaders, and who are, because women, as you might know, are associated with attributes of emotionality and insecurity, irrationality, and being soft and kind. And you know what the leadership, the traditional leadership attribute is? It's like, you know, it's that powerful position, and that powerful, being in that position as a female, it's a problem because it's defined in male terms, in masculine terms. So that's why it becomes a problem for a woman to do well up there as a leader. I'll stop there.
Okay, so now continuing from that, because you have explained that. So this is just a general question that I think I have. Do you think that does it still let's say what can I put it? Does it still effective? Let me not say ineffective. Effective rather, or does it still apply the fact that a woman at work, like let's say that the male structures rather, they expect women to act the way they're expected to work in their homes. Are they expected to do the same thing in workplace, if I can put it like that? Like, do the male structures expect women to act in that way even in workplaces? Or
Yeah, let me explain also. That's also tied to the cultural value. You know, women, because of the cultural values and stereotypes again, these stereotypes can actually lead to work-family conflict. Because I have said that the workplace is designed in a masculine way. So women find it difficult, obviously, to operate there. And then, as if that is not enough, women have always been working, but still at home, nothing is changing. They are still primary caretakers or primary, you know, child care takers, because they are also regarded as emotional beings. So that has never changed, unfortunately. So even if you are a leader out there as a woman, you still have to come back home and do your duty as a wife and as a mother. So those now are huge demands on a woman to handle, because, you know, a family responsibility on its own it has its own huge demands. The workplace also has its own huge demands, because there are long hours that are encapsulated within the workspace, and there's also the fact that the responsibilities are the same as men. So it means that as a woman, you have a double shift. So
Yeah.
all those things competing and facing the woman in that regard. So there's bound to be that a kind of conflict. And people have been asking that, how can we create a balance between work and family? But that can never happen. Authors have noted that there is never a balance for a woman, you know, when it comes to work and family. They are both demanding, and they are both time-consuming and laborious. And a woman has a problem in that regard, because it's men never really come through to help women when they are at home, although they go to work together and provide for the household together. But nothing changes when it comes to division of labor within the household. So that's I can leave it at that for now.
okay, and then now looking at the fact that women now they are going to school, and women now are enhancing their knowledge and their education. So to now looking at it, Ms. Bushisho, like if I can say, since 1994, is there any change in the gap between the women elites and women in the grassroots level? Like looking at that gap, and when you're looking at it like in the development part and maybe the employment part, or anything, is there any change in that gap?
I would like to say first of all that the change is there, but there's a slight change, because if you check in the educational system, the types of careers that women take versus the ones that are taken by men are still different. Most women go for the services sector while men go for the sciences stream. So even in spaces of sciences and technology, we still find that there are a few women who are occupying such spaces. And also when it comes to employment, women, I would say that between the elites and the ones who are at a lower social class, there's still a huge difference. And even if today we are to look at the statistics and say that women are involved in the workplace, we should be able to look at the class and the class and race, because as Mem Nongwazi has said that we need to not only look at the percentage that has women, but we need to look in comparison to the state of classes that the women were in 1994. You find that only a particular set of women from 1994 have been able to access the educational space because of the privileges that they've had. But if you look at certain villages that are still lower in terms of development, we still find that women are still expected to stay at home to serve their communities in particular ways without necessarily climbing the ladder. So there's still a gap in terms of women occupying spaces, because as she has said, looking at the traditional ways of life which we are used to, when we look at villages, women are still expected to take care of families. And when you look at that, they cannot be able to manage two things. When their men are at home, they're still expected to come and cook for them and do all those things. So for some, they have even given up in the spaces of a better life. And as well, we need to look at the issue of teenage pregnancy when we look at education, on how many teenagers have fallen pregnant and failed to go back to school because of taking care of children. So when we look at these things, we need to be able to come to a point where we encourage the teenagers to be able to go back even after school, so that in the future we do not have a higher number of dropouts of girls. So we need to continually encourage our women to occupy spaces that have been deemed to be for men. As she has said, Dr. Nongwazi, that you find that women are associated with things that comes with being soft. So mostly even in the education stream, they opt for careers that are, let's say, for instance, teaching and all these things that are deemed to be soft. But in terms of engineering and sciences, they are still dragging in that area. So we need to be able to rise to that space where we occupy. And in terms of employment, we need to be able to enter into spaces and not only be secretaries and all of those things. We need to rise to a level of being CEOs and all those things that even men are given the chance to occupy.
Okay, so you with what you said, do you think that with our current education system, because I heard you talking about the career field and a lot of things concerning that part. So now with our current education system, do you think that is there any hope that the number of women in leadership position is going to improve in the near future, looking at our education system that we currently have?
I think more than us saying it, it also depends on it being able to be implemented. We can be able to stand today and speak about it happening, but for as long as the opportunities, or rather the doors, are closed, women will never enter into that space. Going back to that question we asked at first, if whether people are intimidated by women occupying such spaces. For instance, there are a lot of people who have degrees in certain fields, but they are not able to operate in those particular spaces. Why? Because when the same people go for an interview, you'll find that their male counterparts counterpart is considered other than them only because they are female. And as such things as them being soft or emotional and not being able to occupy such spaces. So for as long as not all of us are willing to engage on the conversation of gender equality, we would still try and occupy those spaces. But for as long as the mind has not shifted in terms of the capability of a woman, we'll still go back, because people will be thinking that women are inferior. But if we get to a space where we are all rooting for gender equality, then we'll get to a point where we are able to find women in the same spaces that men have occupied.
Okay. So to Dr. Nonzwagazi, may you also add on that education system part to say that is there any hope in the near future that the number of women in leadership is going to increase?
Thank you for the question. I've been actually asking myself the same question at some point. In fact, research shows that now women supersede, young girls and women supersede men in terms of numbers in education. That is a fact. You can Google that, you'll find that actually in some cases, yes, we are near, but it also depends on the fraternity you are taking as a woman. But generally, women have superseded men. But the problem now becomes, but then what happened? What happens to women as they go up the career ladder? What then happens? Because, for instance, let me make an example of PhD candidates. Okay, we may not be equal, but we are already in the 40s, about 42% women who are doing PhD, as compared to men who are doing this thing, who are 58%. But then we talk about, as you go up the career ladder, women disappear, women fall on the side, women, we don't know what happens. What is the dynamics that are stopping women, or the barriers that are stopping them to actually crash the glass ceiling? I've talked about the glass ceiling just now, that there's somewhere where they stop. They cannot go beyond certain positions which are dominated by men. You understand what I'm saying? So what I know is that women are working hard and they are making it. They are very serious about education, such that when you go to high schools out there, hello, there's a noise there. When you go out to high schools, you actually find that the classrooms are filled with, are actually women dominated. And we ask ourselves, what is going on? Where are the men? Why are the young boys? What happens to the young boys? As we empower women, are we leaving the young boys behind? Because really, it's a fact. I went to my old school in Soweto, and I found that miraculously. Hello?
We hear. You can continue.
Okay. Miraculously. There's a lot of women, and I was like, wow, what is going on? Where are the boys? And unfortunately, the boys were outside doing all sorts of funny things. Some are smoking, some are doing, I'm just saying, there's something which we do not do right, because hello, there's just an interrupting noise there. But as we empower women, there's just something that goes wrong. But in any case, women are climbing up. But the problem is there's somewhere where they stop in terms of the career ladder. Can you hear me? Because from my side, Okay, that's
I
fine.
can
All right.
hear you. Yes, I can hear you.
Yes,
Okay, so
that's what I can say.
sorry.
I'm saying, rounding it off, is that it would be easy if there were no barriers up there that are stopping women to climb up the career ladder. But otherwise, in terms of education, women are doing very well.
Okay, thank you. So by saying that, I think that we need to ask ourselves also to say that what are personal and professional support that can contribute to the executive women's development and upward mobility. So that's when I'm sending it back to you to say that. So by saying that, what do you think are the personal and professional support that can contribute to executive women's development and upward mobility?
Thank you again for the question. You know, the problem now that we have as women that I've gathered in my data is that there is lack of institutional support, for instance, for working mothers. So perhaps that's part of the actually finding a problem to reconcile work and family. It's mainly because in policies, there are no gender work family balance policies that are supporting women who are working or even mothers. So I think that that is one of the major barrier that is stopping a woman from actually committing and going high and high. Because the main thing is that, you know, for a woman, the career building coincides with family time to start the family. So you cannot postpone the time to start the family. So obviously you have to navigate work and career advancement as a woman. So those are some of the problems that I can put forward, that women are mainly stopped by lack of institutional support or work policy, the policies that are supporting women. They lack, for instance, mentorship in the workplace, and they're suffering all these barriers, cultural, personal barriers, and organizational barriers. So if we can work towards building the confidence of a woman and also try to change these cultural stereotypes of the culture that actually forms a barrier towards a woman reaching her potential. Like if we can also put mentorship programs for them to navigate that, and policies that will support them as they navigate work. For instance, a young mother, at least we should have crutches within the workspace. There are crutches in other workspaces. So that's a culture that should be taken generally by all companies, so that a woman knows that even when I'm breastfeeding, my child is in a childcare facility that is within the workplace or nearby the workplace. So a mother can feel happy to be able to do both, care for the child, for instance, and do the work if there's support.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we now I will now touch on something that is currently happening. I know it is kind of sensitive, if I can put it in that way. Looking at how it has been happening in our country, looking at more especially the violence that has been happening against women, and looking at the fact that it has become so persuasive and the society has taken it as a norm to say that women are really violated, and it's now happening regularly. It's not even a new thing anymore. So what is your opinion about the society being gradually unmoved and stop seeing it as unacceptable and an aberrant behavior of for women to be violated?
I
Sorry, what was the question? You continue, Puselet. I just want to hear the last part. the question part of it?
It's saying, what is your opinion about the society being unmoved and
Okay.
gradually stopped seeing violence as they've stopped seeing violence as unacceptable, and they've stopped seeing it as an aberrant behavior. So what is your opinion about that? So I will start with you, Ms. Fujish.
Funny enough, during the day as I was thinking of GBV, one thought that came to me was that what apartheid was to South Africans is what men are today to women, because we have come to a point where women walk on the streets afraid of what might happen to them, and afraid just by having someone say hello to them. And that is because of how we have been living life recently. And one thing that causes all this abruptness is it's men feeling entitled to women, to women's bodies, to women's life. And I would like to attach it to these movements that are rising of womenism and feminism. All the movements are saying is that as women, we want to feel safe. We are not subjects of sexual abuse. We are people as well. We need emotions, and we find that when we talk about such movements, men are quick to come at women and bash them. But when it comes to gender-based violence, they are the first ones to be silent, or rather stand in the way of shielding themselves and their behavior. And at the end of the day, they end up pinning it on women, making it a woman's fault that they are assaulting them. Then you would ask yourself, then what about the 80-year-old that you were unprovoked when you assaulted them? What about the 2-year-old? So you find men are just at a state where they have died consciously, and they want to take over the world alone. We find these things in workspaces where bosses require sexual favors from women in order to give them positions at work, or maybe just everywhere. There's nowhere we can run away to where in terms of gender-based violence. So we need to come to a place where we just understand that as women, we are on our own to a certain extent. We are not even sure at which point we are safe, because it's uncles, it's fathers, it's husbands that continue to do these things. And one thing that we can say today is that may we as a society rise and decide that enough is enough. We have not really attained freedom as a society, because as we walk, we are always afraid. I think it's the fact that men, to a certain extent, are not used to women having their own voices, and they are trying by all means to silence them. When a woman stands up for themselves, and men are trying by all means to silence them. When women stand up for themselves, according to them, they probably cannot have their voices heard. The moment women raise their voices, they are shattered. So we just need to come to a point as a society, both men and women, where we need to stand and understand that there needs to be respect for humanity. There needs to be respect for every human being walking on the face of the earth. And this thing has gotten out of hand so much that the government is not even helping in any way. You'll find that people are not even reporting crimes of rape or any form of abuse anymore, because people go to police stations and police do not take them serious. People
Okay, I think she's having network problems. We know, like, this technology thing as
Yes.
not our Yeah, it's not our thing. We're still getting used to the new normal of us being the
Yeah,
having
sure.
the technology. Okay, so I will give you, Dr. Makubela, the platform to continue from the question.
Yes. Okay. All right. You know, yeah, this is a disturbing factor for our country, especially South Africa right now. As Puseletso was saying, this violence against women has reached enormous proportions. It's out of control. And this is mainly because men want to control, they want to exert their power and control over women. I don't want to say men in general. Let's try to refrain from that. Let's say most men, because there are some men who are actually fighting this battle with women. What I would refer this to, I would say, violence is institutionalized within our culture and within our organizations. And that is where the major problem is. So what we know is that we all know that men have a privilege, has this masculine or what they call patriarchal privilege. And this is bestowed on them by our own culture. It gives them so much power, so much that they abuse the power to control these women who are seemingly rising beyond their expectations in terms of the power, education, and those such things in terms of education and employment. So they use physical force and coercion, what we all would refer to as patriarchal terrorism, to intimidate women into silencing them. So that is what I can say. But, then we ask ourselves, what happens to us what happened to us as a humanity, as also Puseletso has asked? What happened to our Ubuntu? Can't we go back and try and bring back that richness of our communal living as Abantu? Apply Ubuntu to actually assist us to curb these various problems that we are actually encountering in our country. Because really, it's true that it has gone beyond, control. And we don't know what to do. We live in fear. And that is what these men who are perpetrating these crimes are happy about. They want to see us powerless. They instill that fear. They want to silence us, to continue that privilege of being men, that masculine privilege that they are currently having, so that we don't match them. That is what I can say. What else really can how else can we explain it? So I'll end there, because Puseletso has said so much on that point.
Okay, thank you. Now, because I've said that, as I've said that we are going to have a debate after this. So now, lastly, like your last remarks or your closing words on women empowerment, like generally, and what we hope to see happening to women empowerment and women in leadership position, like in the near future or in years to come. Your last words on that, Dr. Makubela.
My last words are, whatever strategy that we employ should include men. Because it's not only women who need empowerment, especially in gender issues. And especially in life, because every aspect of life we talk gender is gendered. Let's put it that way. So as we empower, let's talk gender empowerment instead of women empowerment. Because if you empower, like I said before, you empower this woman, you leave the men behind. Do you think the problem will be solved? So my take is that let us do gender empowerment. Let us look at both men and women. We know that men are already ahead of us in terms of employment and those high positions are dominated by them. But in terms of empowerment, especially, you know, we need the well-rounded education in terms of gender issues in our country. And we always target women and talk to women, empower women. But the problem is they go back to their homes where they are dominated by these men, you know. So when we bring them out together, talk to them together, and preach the gospel, and not preach, and I mean educate, spread the awareness, I mean put everybody at the same level in that regard, then I think we'll go somewhere in terms of gender empowerment. And I think that is where we'll find perhaps declining of this silencing and violence that is perpetrated against women and all that. We need to really recognize that we all need to be empowered in this regard. I thank you. I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Maqubela. So, in other words, what you're saying is that for women to be empowered, men also need to be empowered, because this thing, like, they work hand in hand. Because now, if we empower women and leave men aside, still we won't be achieving anything. Is that what you
yes. Yes, I'm saying it will create hostility. Let me first say that. And again, I mentioned that the classroom is, men and boys are disappearing from the classroom. If those men are disappearing from the classroom, where are they? If they are at the corners of the location, they don't get educated, the rate of crime climbs. And again, the softer target is a woman. So you leave out this man to get in, to fall into those cracks. We are creating an even bigger program, a monster, actually. So let's empower both men and let's not leave them behind. Let's make sure that as we empower women, we also empower these boys. Our boys need empowerment as well. And young men and men as well. Let me not say young boys. We start, of course, from the young boys. And so we have to work together because we live together and this is life, men and women, this is life. And as Blacks, we've been struggling with these men in our struggles against racial discrimination, you know. So let's fight together this battle. I know that it is us women who suffer this violence so much that we don't want, we are scared to include them anywhere. But again, if we leave them, what then are we going to achieve? You know, those are the questions that I've been asking myself. And I think for me, the right way to do, we have, much as we have to create our own spaces to empower each other, let's also mix together, you know, let's also mix and empower each other as men and women. Yeah,
Okay,
that is
Dr.
where
Maqubela. Thank you for your time, and we really appreciate your knowledge. And unfortunately, because of this pandemic, now we have to do it online. Like, it was going to be nice if maybe we're doing it face to face, you know, and we have a lot of time so that you can impart this knowledge on us. But
Absolutely.
yeah, unfortunately, we have this pandemic. But thank you for your time. We really, really, really appreciate it, Dr. Maqubela.
You are welcome. Yes, most welcome. Am I released now? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Now.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Okay, then. Okay, thanks and bye, everyone.
Bye now.
Okay.
Bye, doctor.
Okay, welcome to Katuchelo and Sharon. We are about to have a debate session. Okay, I think there's still one that is missing. Katu, where is Temusho?
I'm not aware, but Sharon can start in the meantime.
Okay, so we are about to have a debate, and our motion is this house will believe that Okay, can I check something before I think? Okay, so this house will believe that women empowerment is a myth in developing countries. So that's what we will be talking about now as we're about to start this debate. So Sharon, the platform is yours.
Thank you very much. Evening, everyone. So as Masha has stated the motion to say that is women empowerment a myth in developing countries. Now, firstly, to just clarify what is to empower, right? To empower is to basically uplift, to inspire, to create opportunities for others, to encourage, and to also kind of give others the same chance, or the same chance that you also give, like try to lift others to the same position perhaps that one would be at. So let's look at why are we saying that? Because I am for the motion. I'm basically supporting the statement that states that women empowerment is just a myth. Now, what I'll base my my presentation or argument on is that firstly, we should kind of analyze or talk about the current state of women in leadership in South Africa or Africa, and then compare it with the past, right? I would like, as I stated, I stated what empowerment is. Now, on the basis of the definition, what we now have to look at is, do we see women in leadership position uplifting others to be in the same position? Do we see women in position or in leadership inspiring others to be like them, inspiring others to also want to be in the same position? Do we see women creating the same opportunities or creating just general opportunities for other women to be in those same positions? Now, we have to look at different platforms where women can lead. I think I have to turn on my camera. Fine. Now, we have to look at different organizations, different platforms in which women are leading currently, and generate evidence if ever women are inspiring other women, or if ever women are encouraging and creating opportunities for other women to take up the space. Now, we can start with the political platform, whereby we have so many women in leadership, such as being chairpersons of certain organizations. But do we see them empowering others, having deputies that are women, and creating those spaces, creating those creating those what's the word? Yeah, creating those spaces so that other women are able to also follow and desire also to lead. Because when we talk about leadership, it's not about just commanding people to do what you want at a specific time, but creating new ways in which people are able to survive, live easy. And that is what we need to currently observe. With that being said, I think I've delivered my opening for this motion to say that, do we see women in leadership empowering others, or is it just a myth? Okay, so I've touched the political part of it to say that, is it a myth? Now, let's look at an example of institutional, like universities. We see a lot of vice chancellors being males, and to those in institutions that have vice chancellors that are females, we don't see deputy vice chancellors or deans that are female. So with that being said, I would like to believe that it is a myth, because if ever we see a structure or an executive whereby male dominate and then maybe there is one female, that doesn't mean that that's empowerment. Because one thing we need to also take note is that empowerment doesn't only come from the side of men or the side of females. Like, both genders should be in a position whereby they empower, like women are able to be empowered by other women, and then men also empower women, or men in leadership also empower women. So I would like to state firmly that it is a myth, because we see in so many executives, organizational executives, whereby women that are part of the executive do not empower, do not uplift, because you find that in a space of 5 years, we still have the same we still have the same gender ratio, whereby there is more males than the females. And with that being said, I believe that it is generally a myth in the political sphere, because we see that there isn't any deputy. Women most of the times usually are positioned to be in certain positions. I mean they're believed or to be in certain positions, such as the secretary. But what do the secretary do in terms of empowering other women to take up the space? So with that being said, I would firmly like to say that women are not empowering each other. Women are not being empowered by men. That in general causes me to say that it's just generally a myth to say women are being empowered, because we don't see women taking much space in certain organizations, that in most organizations actually, that we would like to see women taking much space in. Oh, okay. Masha.
Okay.
I'm not sure
Thank you.
there's no specific time frame, and will I be allowed to come again and engage? Because I thought maybe I'll do an opening and then he comes, deliver, and then we have an argument in that manner. So I'm not sure if I should just state my case, rested in that, and then he comes, and I would need clarity on that if I need to proceed.
Okay, so okay. So the thing is, I will let you talk, and then he will talk, and then at the end you are going to have a discussion, if I can put it that way. That's when you're going to, like at the end, when like each and every one of you has presented their cases or their opinion or something like that, if I can put it that way. So Katsu, the platform is yours.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think Sharon's definition of empowerment was very narrow, but I'm not going to dwell much on that, of course. Now, women empowerment is a myth. That's the motion, especially in developing countries. Now, let's look at what's a myth. A myth is unfounded, false notion. In other words, a myth is something which is imaginary. It's not happening. It's a fallacy. That's a myth. So to say women empowerment is a myth in developing countries is completely incorrect. Now, let us look at some of the characteristics of these developing countries. Now, these developing countries are low per capita growth, which means there's very little to less economic growth. They depend highly on the primary sector, and they depend on exports of primary commodities. So if we look at these countries, these so-called developing countries, they're likely countries which have a history of colonization, if we say they depend on exports of primary commodities, it means they have a fair history of colonization. We could see from the scramble of Africa to say these countries are countries which were previously exploited for their natural resources and all other things. So basically, we're talking about countries which under colonization had about sexist policies targeting especially women. These are countries which have reasonably high population growth. But also importantly, these are countries which have policies in place to redress imbalances of the past. So just because of their history of colonization and their history of oppression, they have in place policies which aim to redress imbalances of the past. So is that completely a myth that women were previously disadvantaged? Is it a myth that these countries are going out of their way to redress imbalances of the past? Now, let's just look at I'm just going to look at affirmative action for now. We are looking at empowerment in the workplace, women empowerment in the workplace. Can you still hear me? Now, according to the Employment Equity Act 55 of 1988, it says that the beneficiaries of this equity or the beneficiaries of this act should be mainly women. Secondly, or firstly, should be black. Secondly, should be women. So we are finding that there are already policies in place that, in terms of the employment world, which seeks to prioritize the struggle of women. Now, let us look. Maybe it would help if I juxtapose between then and now, so that you can see that women have indeed been empowered. So let's look then. Let's look before this empowerment took place. Let's just take, for instance, South Africa, post or pre-1994. White women in South Africa, because this is a women issue. It's not a black women issue, but it's a women issue in general. White women in South Africa were excluded from formal employment. Many people do not know that white people in South Africa or white women in South Africa were excluded from formal employment. In other words, white people in South Africa were only allowed to be secretaries or only allowed to be clerks, but they could not go higher than that. So that was the status quo. It was the reality at the time. And black were totally excluded from work. Black were totally excluded from formal employment, which means that your black person could be working as a domestic worker, as a cleaner, and all those other things, but they were excluded from utmost formal work. Now, their employment opportunities for women were very scarce, just because they lacked education opportunities so that they can enter in those positions. So most women were subjected to the apartheid policy of Bantu education. Now, this education, for many of you who do not know what this education entailed, it taught you subjects which were not strategic. In effect, they teach you history, they teach you all these other subjects which do not open the world of work or open opportunities for you. So that's the struggle of women in South Africa, both white and black. Now, such that when I was speaking about the Employment Equity 55 of 1998, the beneficiaries, this equity was meant to redress the imbalances of the past, the imbalances of women. So if you're saying this is a myth, then I don't know what you mean, because this program aims to level the playing field through access to equal education and job opportunity, including remuneration, career advancement, and all the other things. So it's a myth that you think that empowerment of women in developing countries is a myth, because just now you were talking to a woman intellectual, you're talking to a woman lecturer, a woman academic. So I don't know, people who were previously excluded, black women who were being subjected to being domestic workers, who were subjected to all these other things. Now they are entering into this sphere of academics and actually even engaging with men. I'm with two women now to show that women empowerment in South Africa has been real in developing countries, especially because I mentioned the characteristics of developing countries. Now, this employment equity, it compels companies to hire more employees who are black and especially women, furthermore disabled. So I do not know what this obsession about lack of women empowerment is about. Because for your own information, Sharon, the cabinet today, the cabinet of South Africa has 50% women and 50% men. So I do not know what for you would you define women empowerment, because if a cabinet of a country has 50% women and 50% men, then that's some sort of empowerment, don't you think? Now let me stop there for now. We'll engage as time goes. Masha?
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Sharon, what is your opinion about what Katri has just said? Like, I think now you can engage. Because I think it will just be only two of you. So now the platform is open for you guys to engage, and I'm just gonna give you guys plus minus 10 minutes to 6 minutes to just do that.
Okay, thank you, Masha. I understand from what perspective Katu is stating his matter on. But just to engage with regards to policies, there is a lot of policies that have been created to empower a lot of women in South Africa or in general in developing countries. However, realistically speaking, those policies are there but are not actually being practiced. For example, why would we have movements that speaks to women equality? Why would we have feminist movements if ever women are being actually empowered? So I would like to believe that even those policies that are being spoken about, they're actually not being practiced. That's why we still find women in South Africa crying out to say that we're still not getting empowered, because the reality is that it is, yes, written in black and white. It is, yes, stated down. I mean, it is, yes, written down to say that we need to do this. This is needed to be done. This should be practiced, but it's not actually happening. So I'll leave that with regards to policies. Now, coming back to...
Oh.
Can you allow me to finish, then you come in?
Of course.
Okay. Coming back to the issue of the current status of women in leadership, as maybe the cabinet that Katu has stated. What empowerment, like I mentioned earlier on, it's not only seeing it, but like continuous progress, if I may put it that way. We need to see continuous progress in order to verify that what has been stated, or what has been what has been stated and what is in the policies, is it actually being practiced throughout, or it's just something that has been stated and we can only name one example, and then by that we can just say women in South Africa are now empowered. And if we say that, yeah, just because we have 50% of women in leadership at a specific institution or organization, then we're saying that we totally have achieved women empowerment. I'll let Katu engage.
I think it's very unfair to shift the goalposts. We are not talking about whether women empowerment has worked so far, or the extent to which, or the successes to which you can use to measure women empowerment. What we are speaking about is whether women empowerment is imaginary. You've conceded that these things are there in black and white, which means our whole point is established to say this is indeed not imaginary. It's there in the law. Now we have to focus on what? On the implementation of those particular laws. Now let me look a bit at the economic empowerment. Just at that, women back then in the colonial regime were not allowed to take loans without the permission of their men. That was the status quo. Women were not allowed access to opportunities, access to education, access to job opportunities through discriminatory law, limited access and control over productive resources. That is land, your land, and every other thing. So women were denied ownership of such things. So I think it will be very helpful for us to juxtapose to say what happened then. Is it the same as what's happening now? Can we indeed conclude and say that women empowerment or the efforts of women empowerment in developing countries is a myth? We cannot. We cannot,
Okay.
because as much as this has been happening, although my argument is not that we've reached the peak or we've exhausted all our resources trying to achieve that. My argument here is that it's not a myth, because developing countries have been trying their equal best to make policies, to implement, to put into law policies which seeks to empower women. So the issue of are these laws effective or not is a debate for another day, of course. But we are admitting that they have put policies in place to implement, to say we're
Can I
going
come in
to
with
empower
regards to
women
that?
in terms of
Can
economy,
I,
in terms
can I
of
come in
what
with
now you
regards
can
to that?
simply walk into a bank, you can take a loan without having any permission of a man or anything like that. So
Can I engage you
women
on
have
that,
been
Katu?
empowered, but feminism is of the view that women need more empowerment. And of course, I wouldn't argue with that they need more empowerment. But first, they must concede that women are empowered.
Can I come
Take a
in?
bite.
Okay. Now, Masha, what I am stating is that some of the examples that Katu is giving came along with what you call race empowerment. So the issue of women being able to go in the bank and being able to access loans and stuff like that, it came in with the evolution that more black or color people of color needed certain access rights and so forth. So in general, what I mean is that it's not specifically women empowerment. It came in as kind of empowering people of color, which automatically women fall under, but not specifically empowering women in general. You understand? So, yes, women were not allowed to go in banks and access loans. So, as black men were not allowed to, colored people were not allowed to, women were not allowed to certain things. So, as in the past, men or in the apartheid era, men were not also allowed to what you call to have certain access to certain things. But what I'm saying is, with regards to developing countries or having specific, yes, the policies are there. And I totally agree that if something is in writing, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's being practiced. And if it is in writing, it doesn't also necessarily mean that it's not a myth, because it can be in writing. But when we look deep into a myth, we need to see evidence in terms of that specific doing actually being practiced. You understand? So with the rights that Katu is mentioning, I believe that they also came with the liberation of people of color. So his example falls off because, yes, certain things were denied certain things were denied in the apartheid era because of the race issue,
Yeah.
not because women were not generally allowed to access loans or anything like that. So you can take a bite
Okay.
with
Can I
regards.
come in?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
As much as
Okay.
can you
Okay.
hear me?
So yeah, we can hear you. You can continue, and then after that, I'm gonna give you guys maybe a minute to just say your closing statements or your closing opinion.
Okay. During apartheid, there were phases of when these laws were implemented. For example, the past laws, the Women's March in the 1900s or in the mid 1900s. It was such that as much as it was a law, but it fell off. That law fell off and only applied to women then carrying passes, and not everyone. To say, as much as it came with regime change, but we go into a situation where women were being oppressed more than their counterparts, which are men. So, as much as it comes from a regime change, now we are saying empowerment of women. As much as men were also forced to carry passes, and then they stopped at some point, women were more oppressed. So we are admitting, or I am admitting, that for the fact that a person is black, yes, they were oppressed, but they were double oppressed because they are women. So you can't limit that to the race card, that they were only oppressed because they were black. No, they were also oppressed because of their color. In that fact, I made an example of white women also to formal employment. It means that it's no longer a race card.
Kati, you're no longer
So
audible to me,
I'm
so
just
I
going to.
cannot hear you properly.
Are you not audible? Am I not audible? Can you hear me now?
From my side, hello.
Hey,
Okay, I
can
can
you hear
hear
me?
you.
Can you hear me,
Sharon, can you hear
Marcia?
him? Yeah, I can hear you. Sharon, can you hear him?
I can't hear him properly. I can hear that he's speaking, but not like
Okay,
I
let me
can't
try.
hear what he's saying.
Is it still the same?
It's better now.
Okay. Now, I'm going to quickly highlight some of the interventions that have been made so far in terms of the SADC region, SADC community. Now, the SADC region has come up with a women empowerment, economic empowerment framework. Now, their argument is that women are the backbone of African economies. By the backbone, I mean women spend most of their income in feeding their families and in educating their children, which means that obviously then become the backbone of the economies. Now, this empowerment framework intends to facilitate strengthen coordination and implementation of SADC commitments on women's empowerment. Now, what this includes is adoption of policies and law that will allow
I think it's the network on Katu's side.
Is Kachu saying something? Because I can't hear
No,
him anymore.
I think it's the connectivity, because even on my side, I can't hear him anymore. So I really don't know. Yeah, yeah. It's the network
Okay,
problem.
well, whilst we wait on him, I'll let me just close or conclude on my side, and then when it comes, you will wrap up on his side. Asha.
Sharon, you can wrap up. You can conclude on your side.
Okay, so I am saying that women empowerment is a myth, because generally people would argue that because we have policies written in black and white, then we can firmly stand and say that women are being empowered. But if women were truly being empowered, and if that was the reality, then we wouldn't see such movements, I mean feminist movements. We wouldn't be having the huge rise of gender-based violence. So I would firmly stand that women empowerment is a myth. I would also like to point out that within women that are currently in leadership, I haven't seen or heard of women actually empowering others to be on the same level as they are. So to me, it's just a myth. We're just playing around with the name empowerment, because it should be a progression of lifting up, inspiring, and creating opportunities for other women to be on the same level as other women and as other male males in any organization. So in general, what we personally, I think, then should be personally what I think should be in terms of the motion. I would think that it's no longer about is it a myth or not, but if ever is it a reality or not, because yes, it's written in black and white. Yes, we want to play around with the what you call the terminology myth, but is it a reality? Are we practicing that? Are we empowering each other? Because like I mentioned earlier, empowering should be from both genders, women empowering each other and also males within specific organizations empowering women also to be on the same level as would like to see women in different what you call portfolios. So just to wrap up, I firmly believe that women empowerment is just a myth and not a reality. Yes, it's written in black and white. I would acknowledge that. However, it's not being practiced. The evidence that women are not being empowered shows with a lot of movements that have been going on in these countries and many other countries trying to empower women. There wouldn't be hashtags that try to empower women if ever women were actually being empowered. I think, yeah, that's basically what I would touch on.
Okay, thank you. And I, I like there's something that you said that I find interesting. The fact that as much as it is written in black and white, it doesn't mean that it is going to be followed. It's just for formalities to say that we have these policies, but it's not like they do follow those policies. They just have them just be, for the fact of having them, not just to follow them. So yeah, thank you, Sharon, and thank you everyone for your time. I think Ukatu has network problems and everything. So yeah, thank you guys. So this is the end of our women's conference. So yeah, thank you. Enjoy your weekend and happy Women's Day in advance.
Thank you very much, Masha.